think it used to be like there's these devices called iPods, and it was like something that got
Is that what that's from?
to the iPods.
Oh, he's just messing around. I thought he was going to.
So welcome to the podcast, everybody. This is brought to you by the Lawrence County Youth Network here in Lawrence County, Indiana. If you're watching from elsewhere, hey, thanks for tuning in. So we're doing something special this Advent season. We wanted to give our perspective. A lot of times, I think the teens miss out on kind of where we're coming from when we put these lessons together, when we put these videos and discussions together, what's going through our minds and how we process through it. So that's just kind of what we wanted to do with this podcast, to give you a little bit more in-depth look into how we think. So, gentlemen, why don't we introduce ourselves?
I'm Nick, and I lead a ministry called Between the Crowd, and I've been in youth ministry for close to 20 years now. I'm the oldest man sitting at the table.
No comment. It's true.
Yeah.
Facts.
And I'm Gabe, and I'm a youth minister at Mount Pleasant Church, and I've been here for almost 3 years. And so I've only been doing it for 3, not as much as Nick, but
You're not as old as I am.
yeah.
Where are you originally from, Gabe? Tell them.
I'm from California. My wife and I moved here from California.
Do it. Tell them now.
We're both from California. We moved here. I moved here, like I said, almost 3 years ago, and it's been good. Life's good. We just got 2 puppies, and God is using them as tools of sanctification, which means that they're really testing my patience and all of me. But it's been really good. Puppies are adorable, so you can't be too mad at them.
Just
They
wait till
are
you have
cuties.
kids. And pro tip, never have a baby and a puppy at the same time.
Did you do that?
Yes,
Mm.
it was bad.
Mhm.
And I'm Daniel, and I'm the youth minister at the Mitchell Church of Christ down south of the river here, a small town called Mitchell. And I've been here for right at 6 years. It was 6 years ago on November 28th that we first moved into the neighborhood, as we might talk about later in this podcast. But
Okay.
it's been great. What?
That means you two combined haven't been in ministry as long as I'm so old.
You are.
I thought he was going to say as long as I've been in ministry. And I was going to be
Yeah.
like, okay, Nick, we get it. We get it. You're a veteran.
Oh,
I've been in
gosh.
full-time ministry for almost 10 years now. So it'll be 10 years next spring, fully. So
We're going to have to make sure Dave is in this at some point, so there's someone older than me here.
Yeah.
And Derek.
And Derek, yeah.
Okay.
So guys, it's the Christmas season. So I want to ask you, what is one of your favorite childhood memories from Christmas season? I'll give you a moment to think
Can
about
it be a
that.
gift?
It can be a gift. It can be whatever comes to mind. What's your favorite memory from childhood?
When I was when I was younger, our family didn't have a lot of money, so we were always, if we got game systems, they were very behind. When the PS2 was out, we got the Super Nintendo. Nice. So if that tells you, there's a lot of generations in between. And I remember one year, and we didn't ask for much. We knew we didn't have much, but one year I was asking for a GameCube, and the GameCube had been out for years, so it wasn't anything brand new. And through Christmas, we opened our gifts, and the last thing was a big box, which big boxes are promising. You think, it's cool, but I didn't care because as soon as I opened the last small gift, it wasn't a GameCube. And I was in middle school. I was older, and I started crying like angry tears, like, I told you I wanted a GameCube. And I'm usually I'm not a brat like that. And my mom's like, well, stop complaining, just open your last gift. And I'm like, I'm not gonna open it. I don't want that stupid thing. And she said, you're gonna want to open that gift right now. She was getting mad. And and I was like, whatever. And I rip up the wrapper, I open the box, and it's a TV and a GameCube. My mom got me a TV, and the reason this means a lot to me is because we really didn't have money. It was she got me a little TV, well, nothing special. I mean, it's just a little thing, but I didn't have a TV, and she got me a GameCube, and I remember that, and I wiped my tears and I hugged my mom, and it's a favorite memory for me because I know my mom worked a lot to save that money to buy that game system, and two, it reminds me how petty I am. How or we can all be, I guess. I mean, why would I was crying because I didn't get what I wanted, and I ended up getting it anyways. But it's a humbling moment, but it was cool because that was the greatest gift ever. However, I didn't get a memory card, so you kind of need that. So I didn't figure it out till I was like 10 hours in the game, and then I'm like, wait a second, this is not gonna work. Memory cards, teenagers, are these things you used to put in a game system to save your game. You guys, honestly, do you think teens today know about? They haven't had to mess with it, right?
Well, I think we have enough gamers that have done like more vintage gaming, on Super Nintendo and N64 and stuff like that.
Maybe.
So I don't know. What was your favorite GameCube game?
My favorite GameCube game. I had 3. I still have them.
Nice.
Legend of Zelda: Wind Waker. Second favorite game of all time. Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man. You can play as Venom and Spider-Man. That was revolutionary back in the day. And then Shrek 2.
Nice.
It's a really fun game.
That's awesome. So, Nick, favorite childhood memory from Christmas?
Mine is kind of similar to Gabe's, except I was never a video game kid. I'm still not. I wish I could play video games, but I can't. I get motion sickness from them. So, yeah.
It's a touchy subject.
Yeah.
So no VR headset for you?
No. But for me, I actually
just stick it on it.
So if you ever get upset with me and you want to take me out, just put a VR headset on me.
Duct tape it, throw them to the field.
When I was a kid, like I grew up on a farm that had a creek that ran through it, and so like I lived to fish. One summer I was flipping through one of Dad's outdoor catalogs, Cabela's catalog, and I saw this reel. It was the Bullet 38 by Zebco. And I was like, that's it. Like that, no fish will be able to stand against me if I have this reel. And so for months, that's all I wanted. Like every time the catalog showed up, I circled that, like, this is what Nick wants for Christmas. That was it. And then Christmas Day rolls around, and I get up and I go and I kind of go through all the gifts, and it's not there. I'm like, this is all I wanted, was this little reel. That was it. And I'm like, well, there's still hope, because, we're going to Dad's parents. We're going to Grandma and Grandpa's. And we go to Grandma and Grandpa's, and I got a bicycle or something there. Whatever. Like and then, so I was just kind of losing hope. And we get to Granny and Pappy's, my mom's parents. And Pappy was my fishing buddy, when I was a kid. And we get down to that point, and they give all the grandkids a gift, and they hand me the box, and I rip the wrapping paper off of it. It's like, this is the last chance. And it's the box for a space heater. And I was terrified of my parents, so I did not throw a fit. I did what was least likely to get me whipped. So I was like, thank you. I live in the coldest room in the house. This will be great. And my pappy just looked at me and was like, Nick, open the box. And so I opened the box, and there it was, the Zebco Bullet 38 reel. And I used it a lot over the next few years. And what made it most special to me was who gave it to me. It wasn't about the reel. It was that it came from Pappy, who was, outside of my dad, probably the man I loved the most on this planet. So to receive that from him made all the difference in the world. And I actually still have that reel. It sits on my bookshelf next to my bed.
Is it small?
It's not huge. It's not a big reel. If I'd known, I would have brought it with me today. I didn't know that was a question I was going to get asked.
I would have brought my GameCube.
If
you told me, but.
Frankly, if you've seen me preach around Christmas time in the last 3 years, you've seen me with that reel. I talk about that all the time. So it's one of the few things that, like, if I talk about it for too long, I start to tear up a little bit.
Nice.
Bambi doesn't even make me tear up.
Oh, you heartless man.
Yeah, but a fishing reel.
Yes. Well, this kind of leads into this discussion, because those are both awesome answers. And I think most of us in our childhood probably have some kind of experience like that, where our parents might pull a whole bait and switch, like try to disguise the boxing and the packaging for it. But one of the coolest things about Christmas, in my opinion, is the expectation, the excitement that just builds and builds. And a lot of times, if we're honest, the anticipation is better than the actual day in a lot of ways. There's something that goes on in our brains where the anticipation of knowing that something's coming can excite us, can get us pumped up more than actually getting the thing itself. We've all experienced that probably. You order something off Amazon and you're like at the window on the day it's supposed to arrive, like, where's the mailman? Where's the UPS truck? And you're excited and you're like, oh, this is great. I'm finally getting whatever it is. And then the box comes, you rip it open. Okay, I got this. Now what? Like, it's like, yay, I have it. Okay, next, moving on.
It's like the dopamine dump ends when the tape rips.
Exactly. And not to say that, you didn't have fun. You didn't have fun with your fishing reel. You didn't have fun with your GameCube. But just the excitement level tends to just kind of drop a little bit. And the whole season of Christmas, as we're experiencing it, called Advent, is about longing. It's about expectation. It's about those who are in darkness waiting for the light to come, right? And so Dave started us off this week with an excellent video about hope, because as we see with the Advent candles, the first one that is lit represents hope and the expectation, the awaiting, the expectant longing. And so I would just want to start us off by reading this passage that he referred to in Isaiah. Yes, Isaiah, an Old Testament book from the Hebrew Bible, Isaiah chapter 9, one that's read quite a lot during this time. But check this out. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. I love this imagery, so I'm just going to read all the way through verse 7 here. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the days of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdened them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning and will be fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born. To us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. For the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. What do you guys think this passage speaks to us about hope and the expectant longing that this season implies? Not just for Christmas presents, but more than that. What do you guys think that this speaks into our lives right now?
I love the word expectation. That's kind of a word I've been leaning into in the last couple of weeks as I've been preparing different things for like the podcast and videos and some stuff I've been writing. Just that word of expectation, there's something to it. There's some weight to it that I think really speaks to how I feel personally at this time. Just kind of that the excitement, but also this knowing that something is coming. Like it's this being it's an intentional awareness. Expectation is this intentional awareness that something is coming, that something's going to happen, and it's going to be out of the norm. And that's when I think about expectation. That's what comes to mind. This idea that something is coming that's outside the norm, and in this case, it's going to be big. It's really big. I love this passage of scripture. Again, it's grown on me as I've spent some time with it. But I'll stop for now.
I think we have to keep in mind that if you don't know what you're expecting for, then there's no expectation. You mentioned earlier the expectation of Christmas. There was a time right around my maybe 7th grade year that My mom started selling tamales. You guys ever had tamales?
Mm-hmm.
Not being judgmental because your skin color, but
Yeah, I will.
my mom would make tamales, and that's how she would provide for us. That's how we made a living. She'd make tamales in the holiday season. It got crazy. I mean, hundreds of dozens of tamales is what we would be making.
Wow.
And Christmas became a drag because Christmas season to me meant a lot of work. It meant the months before and even the weeks before and the week of and the day before Christmas, the 24th, was by far the worst day of the year for me as I got older because of all the work. So for me, the expectation for Christmas was different than yours. So for me, it became this drag. So what you expect, what's on your mind, I mean, that matters too, because if to some people, Jesus is not someone who they want to come back or someone they want to know, then the expectation for him is either not there or they're expecting something bad to happen, or they're expecting judgment. Or so I'm learning that with the expectation thing, we have to set straight who we're expecting and who it is, because it's hard to expect someone you don't really know or care for. And say today, Christmas, I love Christmas now because we're not making tamales anymore. For me, Christmas now is a time where I get to leave Indiana. I love Indiana, no offense, but we get to go with family. We get good presents, we have fun, we eat good food, and I love that time and with our families and going to church and a really good time of rejoicing, thanking God for all that He's done. So now it's good, but before it was bad, and that makes me think, I guess, of where people stand with their relationship with God, because if you don't know who you're expecting, then this whole Advent expectation season is just gonna be bland, or yeah, I guess, but I don't really know what we're what we're talking about here. So I hope I didn't dig into anything.
No, you're good. You're good. That's a good perspective on it to keep in mind too.
I was gonna say, I myself am not a big Christmas guy, especially in the last few years, like because I'm single. I don't have a wife. I don't have kids, and I'm old enough now that mom and dad don't need to be buying me gifts. Like Christmas looks very different for me now than what it was. And so it's been an interesting process for me to kind of walk through that and look at like what is Christmas when it's not about gifts. It's not about the expectation of what I'm going to get. And it actually is about something else. And so this year, I've really enjoyed this process of prepping for these videos and going through building this curriculum, because Advent is growing on me. The expectation of coming. Of the coming King is pretty fantastic for me, because it, like you said, you got to know what you're expecting. It's just giving that shift to this entire season has been fantastic.
Because it's easier to say that Jesus is the reason for the season, but
yeah,
but if we don't believe it really,
right,
then yeah, obviously the gifts sound way better,
right?
If you don't really think of Jesus in that way.
Yeah, I mean, when I read through this passage and I think about this idea of expectation and longing and hope and looking to waiting for God to act and to move, this passage in particular here in Isaiah, like the context of it, like they're in the middle of a battle, they're in the middle of a war with the enemy neighboring nations around them. And they're asking God for a sign, like give us something. Let us know that what we are awaiting, this victory, this freedom from our oppressors, this for you to act and move and to remove our enemies from us. And they're asking for a sign, and Isaiah says, "Okay, we'll give you a sign. The light is coming, and God's going to put an end to all these battles and to all these wars, and this will end." But it's going to be a little while, because you got to wait for this young woman to get pregnant and to have a child. And by that point, when he's starting to get weaned a little bit on solid foods, then everything's going to be fine. But you got to wait a little while. And that might have actually been a little bit earlier, Isaiah chapter 6 and 7. But here in chapter 9, it's like we're awaiting this great victory to come, and God to move and God to act, and he's going to bring somebody in. Who are we looking for? a baby, a child. Like, it defies our expectations in a lot of ways. So a lot of times what we think, what we're expecting from God shows up in a completely different way too.
And they're gonna walk through exile before this too. So like soon, I don't think he's done it yet, but soon Isaiah is going to start talking about the exile into Assyria that they're going to live through for multiple generations. But he lays this foundation, this groundwork of, but there's hope. There's reason to hope. They're going to lose everything. You know, we feel inconvenienced right now because, you know, we're supposed to be 6 feet apart and wearing a mask, and, you know, we shouldn't go to Walmart just because I'm bored and that's what we do. They're going to lose everything. They're going to be driven out of their homeland. They're not going to go to California by choice. Somebody's going to come in and at effectively gunpoint say, you're going very, very far from home. And to kick that off, to prepare them for that, Isaiah is saying, hope. There's hope. You're going to lose everything, but there's hope, which is just a mind-blowing thought to me. There's this sense of hope, even though their entire world is going to get flipped upside down.
Yeah. Like, it just makes me think, too, of... I'm a huge nerd, for those of you who don't know me. And my favorite book series of all times is The Lord of the Rings. And it's also my favorite movie series. Well, it's right up there with Star Wars. But specifically, within the Lord of the Rings movies, The Two Towers is my favorite of them.
Really?
Really, yes. Because, like, yes, Return of the King, like, you kind of know what's going to happen. And no matter how many times I watch The Two Towers, and it gets to the Battle of Helm's Deep, and Aragorn and Theoden King and the last of the Rohirrim are kind of literally backs against the wall in this fortress with the orc horde, the Uruk-hai, I should specify, of the White Hand of Isengard are just pressing in on all sides, on all fronts.
Yeah.
Aragorn remembers what Gandalf had said. Look for me on the 5th day with the coming of the light. And he convinces Theoden King and the rest of the Rohirrim to mount up on their horses, to ride out to death or victory, whichever meets them. And it's at that moment that the sun peeks over the horizon, over these hills, and outrights Gandalf with these 1,000 other riders of the Rohirrim that he has gathered. And they come and just completely crush the Uruk-hai army. And if you've seen it, like, you probably get chills just even thinking of that. I love that moment because no matter how many times I watch it, I still think, oh my gosh, like, this is bad. And then the light shines. It's like, there he is, the rider on the white horse. And like Tolkien, when he's writing these stories, like, he was a Catholic and he wrote these as Christian allegory a lot of times. And so this idea of the light is coming when everything seems hopeless, when everything seems darkest. Look for the light, because the light is coming. You may have to go through the battle, but the light will come.
Yeah, that is a beautiful scene. Like, to watch it or read it is incredible. And you're right. I sat over here and got chills because I've seen. I don't know how many times I've seen it either, or how many times I've read it at this point. But it's just this overwhelming wow. So this is one of the cool things in this passage of Scripture. As I've been doing research and sitting in this for a while, a lot of Isaiah chapter 9, where the prophet is talking to the people of Israel, specifically Judah, a lot of this language is put into what's called perfect tense. And perfect tense has a starting point, but not really an ending point. There's a continuation in it. And so there's a sense of Isaiah saying to the people, the hope starts now, and then will continue on. And then we see that hope come to life throughout the rest of Scripture. We see that hope echoed in John chapter 1, and God moved into the neighborhood. He took on flesh and moved into the neighborhood. And then we see that hope echo again in Romans when he says, I've come for this people. And then that hope continues on into Revelation chapter something. I can look, but and he says, "I'm the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end." I'm here, and I will lead you off into the future. And so there's this beautiful place where Isaiah starts the message of hope, and then writes it in such a way, speaks it in such a way that he means this hope is going to continue on. This isn't just a hope for us right now. This is a hope that will carry us through all the turmoil we're going to see in days ahead. And for those who will come into the light, that hope is going to be there for them as well. Because I think, I could be wrong, I don't know that there are any indications, but I think Isaiah, the prophet, recognized that his words weren't just for him. He was speaking on behalf of God, and so his words were for something greater than just Judah at that point. That's entirely speculation. But I think he had some sense, the prophets had to have some sense that what they would offer up would have echoes throughout eternity.
Well, yeah. That let's see. Was it 1 Peter, or is it 2 Peter? Yeah. This is exactly concerning salvation. The prophets who spoke of the grace that was to come searched intently with the greatest care, trying to find out if the time or circumstances to which the Spirit of Christ in them was pointing. When he predicted the sufferings of the Messiah and the glories that would follow, it was revealed to them that they were not serving themselves but you when they spoke of these things. So that's exactly the point that Peter's trying to make in 1 Peter. These prophets of old, like Isaiah, like Jeremiah, like Zechariah, they knew that they were speaking on behalf of God. These were the oracles of God. These were the words of God. And they were speaking to their very specific situation. Mm-hmm. So when we read Old Testament prophecy, you got to put it into its original context if you can. And then they also, I think, knew that their words would live on and find ultimate fulfillment in Christ, who they were pointing to, for sure.
By the way, it's Revelation 1:8.
Yeah, there you go. It's like, that's Revelation chapter 1, right? Yep.
I am the Alpha and the Omega, says the Lord God, who is and who was and who is to come, the Almighty. Just this, again, that sense of continuation of hope and expectation.
All right, so with all of this talk, we've put together some discussion questions that we had the teens go through, maybe in their small groups or in youth group or even in their homes. But I want us to maybe talk about a couple of those questions from our perspective too, if you guys are okay with that. So the first time, and I mean, this could be like all of 2020 gestures broadly, but maybe if you would just be vulnerable, we'd hate that word, right? And open, and share a time when you felt hopeless.
So for me, it's actually, I can point to a very specific time just about 8 years ago, a little over 8 years ago. I was leaving the last organization I worked for and spent 3 or 4 months just kind of in limbo, not knowing what was next. So at that point, a third of my life had been working for this other organization, and then it was over. It was just gone. It was one of those, one day I was there and the next day no more, and I don't know what I'm doing next. I didn't have any income to speak of. I was subbing, but that doesn't pay a mortgage. And at one point in there, I actually had a sheriff's notice taped to my door that my house was being foreclosed on, and I was just kind of at this loss of like, what on earth am I doing, and what does this look like? You know, what is life? Why am I fooling with any of this? I was not like in a deep depressed state. It was just like I was lost at like, what am I even supposed to do with my life? Because my identity was gone, because what I'd done for a third of my life, my entire adult working life at that point was gone. Like the biggest identifier, what to me was the biggest identifier of who I was gone. And so I was at a loss of like, who am I? What am I doing? What's my purpose in this world? And it was just an incredibly hopeless and dark season in my world.
That's hard. How about you, Gabe?
When I was in high school, I was probably a sophomore, is when I started thinking about my future more. When I was younger, my mom and my siblings and I, we were all illegal in the country, and we didn't have anything set up for us. I mean, my mom made tamales and we sold them in front of a store on Sunday mornings to make money for rent. And that sophomore years, I was thinking about college. I had great grades. I was a good athlete, but no college is going to take you if you're not, a resident. And I that year challenged me a lot, having thoughts of, what's the point if, I can't even go to college. I'm just going to have to move back to Mexico, and things aren't going well where we're from. And I remember having the sense of, what's the point? I just would say that over and over. And then I grew extremely bitter towards people who seemed to have everything without doing anything. The people in school I knew whose parents gave them cell phones or new clothes, or they got a ride on a car to school, and I'd be wearing hand-me-down clothes and no cell phone. I'd ride the bus. And so I grew bitter. I grew hopeless about my future. And that was around the time that I was invited to an event. It was a fifth quarter from YFC. I went after a football game. The quarterback invited me. He went to a church, and I went in and I heard about the love of Jesus, and I had heard it before. My mom took me to church, but I never cared for any of it. But it was through relationship. I had felt that hopelessness and despair and bitterness. I was mad at everyone and at everything for no reason. And I heard the message of hope, and I kept that in here. And I remember I was outside, or we have a little apartment, and there was like this broken concrete pad, and I had an old basketball hoop, and I was playing basketball, and I was just like thinking, and I guess talking to God, and I just remember thinking, I need something. I need some help. And it was then when my life started changing, and I can get into it more, but the question is, when have you felt what was the exact word?
Felt hopeless.
Hopeless.
Yeah.
Was I had all the troubles, but no answer.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the buts and the limitations and things I needed help with, and it seemed like there was no way out because I didn't know of a way out.
Mm-hmm.
So those young years, middle school and on, were rough for me for that.
Yeah, those are hard times. So kind of what you started with, we'll go back to you, Nick. In your dark moment, in your hopelessness, how did you ultimately find hope? What did the story of Christ, the message of Christ, the Spirit of God, how did that help you overcome this?
Fortunately, I knew Jesus at that point in life. And so my natural inclination was just to pray, like, what's next? And then started having conversations with people I trusted. And we talked a lot about Jesus and what Jesus was doing and where I might fit in the midst of that. And that's where Between the Crowd was born. It kind of came out of that season of just spending time with Jesus and knowing him better and realizing my value did not come from the work that I was doing. Like, who I was as a person wasn't defined by the work that I was doing. My value as a person was defined by Jesus, who saw fit to give all for me. So yeah, that's where the hope really, really started to show up in the midst of that.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Gabe? Tell us a little bit more about your story.
Yeah, and I kind of answered it already.
Yeah.
Was for me, feeling hopeless. All that started changing when I did hear about the love of God, and I heard someone put it a certain way that it stuck to me. It's I had issues with feeling alone because our dad left, and he didn't call or anything, so that can't help a kid, when you feel like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I guess I'm not really worth much if my own dad won't talk to me, or hopelessness when you are a kid and you don't know if you can go to college or get an education. What are you going to do with your life? So I had all these things against me, and I just had no answer. And the answer did really come when I heard about a father who wouldn't leave me, a Father who would actually provide, a Father who, no matter what I've done and how angry I am, he's still going to love me. So knowing who Jesus really was, that helps me actually put hope in him, because if you don't know who Jesus is, why would you trust him? If you don't know, if you don't really know that he said he'll provide and he's going to love you, then why would anyone put their trust on someone if you don't really know what they're about? So knowing not about Jesus, but who he really was, like really, really knowing him, that's what helped me put my trust in him. And troubles kept coming years and years, and my immigration stuff wasn't fixed, like that, because I knew Jesus. A lot of my battles kept going, but the only difference was that I had hope. I didn't carry the burdens. I started letting those things go, and it only happened when I really knew who Jesus was. That's why I brought up earlier the need for not just expecting Jesus, because we can all be expecting Jesus, but if personally you have no real expectation, then it's not really worth much. So knowing who Jesus was crucial for me to fully put my trust in him.
Yeah, I mean, those are some amazing thoughts, and my life for sure hasn't been perfect at all. My adult life has just been one long string of, how are we going to make this work? I don't know how we're going to make this work. And then somehow God makes it work.
Huh.
Like when we try to rely on our own abilities, our own, finances, our own skills, just ourselves, things just seem hopeless. Like, how can we make this happen? But it's only when we have, and I'm speaking for myself and my wife, and she would say the same thing, it's only when we have kind of surrendered and said, okay, God, just do with this as you want, because we can't make it work. Every time it's worked out. Whether it's needing to make a move or running into financial struggles and difficulties or whatever else it may be. That's why actually coming up pretty soon, kids, don't tell your parents, but my wife and I are actually going to go get tattoos sometime soon. And mine that I've wanted to have, I know, right? Ooh, this turned into a liberal podcast. No. But the tattoo that I'm getting and that I've wanted to get for a long time actually comes from the book of Genesis. The story where Abraham is tested by God to offer his son Isaac, and he goes through everything, putting his faith in God, and like, he and I will go up and then we'll come back down. And like, he had in some way to know that like God's gonna do something, but I'm gonna trust him no matter what. And sure enough, God, stayed his hand and stopped the knife and provided a sacrificial ram, and he named that mountain Yahweh Yireh, the Lord will provide. And that has just been a recurring theme. Not that I'm like flipping a coin into a wishing well, not that I'm using God as like a vending machine where if I do all the right things in all the right ways, then God has to do this. Not in a manipulative way, but just a simple trust, knowing, okay, I've done all I can do and I can't make it work. And it's only going to be by the power of God that something works out. And it has every single time. And that's just, that's Christmas, when everything seems hopeless and darkness.
Have you seen my stuff about the coffee cart that I have? I have a coffee cart, and you pronounce it differently. I pronounce it Jireh, Jehovah Jireh. And my coffee cart is called Provider Coffee Co.
Oh, okay.
Because my whole life is testimony for God is the provider. Yeah. God's always going to provide. And so I think it's cool. As soon as you said it, I noticed you pronounce it differently. You might be right. But it's the same thing. And I guess, honestly, it's the same thing for all of us, right? God's always going to be, he's always been the provider, no matter how you cut it. But no, it's cool to hear that, because I definitely sympathize with that. I mean, no matter what goes on, it is God who's going to carry us through. There's no way around it. And if we think otherwise, then we're probably wrong.
Yeah.
We think that we're going to provide for ourselves.
Yeah, it's been my experience that when you try to do things on your own, you can maybe get, I don't know, halfway, maybe 80% of the way, whatever. But I've never been able to go all the way with any of my plans, with anything that I've done on my own. I've always had to rely on God, and he has always pulled through. So
That's good.
I think it's about time to wrap this thing up. And I want to end with this one passage from Romans. So this is Romans chapter 5, and we'll end with this. It says, therefore, since we've been justified through faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have gained access by faith into this grace in which we now stand. And we boast in the hope of the glory of God. Not only this, but we also glory in our sufferings, all the garbage we have to go through in our lives, all the times that we've had our backs against the wall, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. One of my favorite Christmas songs is not really a Christmas song, but it's a song by the Goo Goo Dolls. And the Better Days is the name of it. And my favorite line is, tonight's the night the world begins again. Fresh starts, new hopes, new dreams, new expectations, and longings for God to move and act in big ways. So thanks for listening. We'll try to do this weekly for a while and kind of get this ball rolling. So thank you. Feel free to share this along with your family, with your friends, with your your in-group, your pod, your COVID bubble, whatever you will. And thanks for watching or listening, and we'll catch you next time.
I'm Nick.
I'm Gabe.
And I'm Daniel. See you later.
We didn't even plan that. That was cool. All right. You have a COVID bubble?
Kind of. Mostly it's just
Is that
me
a
by
term
myself.
teams are using today?
I think it's a pod.
Who's in your COVID bubble?